Sony's State of Play was a show that ticked the boxes with what it had to achieve. Let's have a look at my 5 favourite games that were shown off during it. So in 2026, I've solely played on the Nintendo Switch 2. So when a State of Play rolls around, the question for me is, what games are going to draw me away from that console and bring me back to my PlayStation 5? So these are 5 games that interested me most. However, I think 2 of them are definitely going to come to the Switch 2. One is already announced for the system. One we'll just have to wait and see. But let's jump in. Marvel's Wolverine is a game that could definitely bring things across for me. The game looks genuinely beautiful. No questions there. The other thing that definitely strikes me is it looks to be far more level-based than an open world. And so I don't think this is a game that is going to overstay its welcome. I could easily see the runtime being 20 hours or less, which for me, I think really does speak to me quite a bit. I find that a lot of the open world Sony games that have been released over the last sort of generation really have gone a little bit long in their runtime. Even though God of War Ragnarok, for example, was my game of the year in 2022, it definitely was a lengthy game. And something like Ghost of Yotei last year, ultimately I didn't finish because I sort of felt like I'd had my fill sort of 25 hours in. And I felt like I needed probably another 25 hours to sort of beat the game. And so this really does speak to me. I like the violent nature of the gameplay, the blood splattering everywhere. It's something you don't really see from this studio with their games in the past. Think, Spider-Man or Ratchet and Clank. And so I think this one is definitely one that I'll be looking forward to. The question as to whether or not I will buy it day one, I think it will come down to what other games are releasing around it. The rumor is Fire Emblem is going to release potentially that same week. And so if it does turn out to be the case, I probably would go with playing the Fire Emblem game. But then again, if there are stellar reviews for this title, it's definitely one that I want to pick up. The next game I wanted to highlight was Rayman Legends Retold. I did a video questioning whether Ubisoft would show up at any of the showcases this month because they're not showing their own event. But the week before, Rayman Legends Retold was essentially spoiled, and now we got to see it in its first sort of gameplay. And the big question for me comes down to the visuals, because I played Rayman Legends back on the Wii U in 2013, and I probably put another 5 or so hours of it when it came to Switch, because it really is a fun game. I'm someone that doesn't replay a lot of games, but this is genuinely one of the great platformers. However, I like the visuals that were shown off here, but I kind of prefer the hand-drawn art style that was there in the original release. So I like the fact that this Rayman Legends game is being sort of bundled with Rayman Origins sort of enhanced. So you will be able to play the original hand-drawn style in its sort of first version. But seeing the 3D sort of 2.5D style does appeal to me, but I think it's going to leave a little bit to be desired when it comes to the visual style, because it was so unique when it launched back 13 years ago. And so I kind of question why this game ultimately is being made. I think I'd prefer a third game in the series in that style, but I think ultimately they've chosen to go down the safer side, and the argument of waiting to see how this sells before making another new game is probably not really required, because we're now going to be waiting till 2030 at the very least if this game does sell quite well. The next game to discuss, I think, is Bancho The Chef. This year I started by playing sort of games in my backlog, and I did actually play Dave the Diver. It was a game that I just bought and it sat in the backlog for years, and I finally got to play it. It was a game I really do enjoy and do recommend. So I am excited to see not just the In the Jungle DLC coming out later this month, but now this sort of spin-off game following Bancho in probably 10, 20 years before the events of Dave the Diver. Will this be a game similar to that style? Because I personally found the cooking elements in Dave the Diver not to be the strong suit, quite frankly. So the question for me is, can they sort of flesh those systems out to be more entertaining? And will the runtime be shorter on this, or will it be similar to Dave the Diver, which took me around 30 hours to beat? So I think at 30 hours, I wouldn't be interested in this game, but I think if this was a shorter 5 to 10 hour experience, I think that would be the sweet spot. We'll just have to wait and see. I assume this will come to Switch too, but it's definitely coming to PlayStation 5, though no date was given at this stage. The next game I want to talk about is Until Dawn 2, which kind of surprised me. I hadn't really heard that this was in development, but it's being made by the team at Firesprite. And Until Dawn, I've got some fondness for when it released back in 2015. There was a deal with JB Hi-Fi that they still do, I believe, where if you traded in 2 games, you could get a new one for free. And I remember buying Until Dawn knowing I was going to trade it in within a week to get the Phantom Pain, the Metal Gear Solid 5 game. And so I had like a week to beat this game. I had nothing booked, and I just sort of sat back and played Until Dawn and absolutely loved it. So I really do have some fondness for that game. But I do think ultimately, now that we're sitting here, it's been over a decade. There was a movie last year that, for all reports, I haven't seen it, but it wasn't very good and probably didn't do all that well at the box office. I am surprised they are making a sequel. It looks interesting, but I kind of want to see more, and I don't know if I would be there day one to play this game, because I think Until Dawn was a very unique experience. Maybe it will have been enough time once it comes out, likely next year, but ultimately, I would like to see more in terms of what the game truly is before release, but we'll just have to wait and see. Then the big game of the show was, of course, God of War Laufey, which does not have a release date at the moment. I would speculate this is going to be at the earliest late 2027. However, if they did think they could hit the 2027 release date, I think we would have gotten it, so it will likely come out in 2028 before the release of PlayStation 6, I would speculate, because the belief is the PlayStation 6 will not release next year and will come out in 2028 due to all these RAM shortages that are going on at the moment. So I quite liked what we saw. I was very surprised to find out after the show that Cory Barlog is not the director of this game, so he is clearly working on something else, which means there are maybe 3 or 4 games going on at Santa Monica Studios, because we are already aware of the God of War original trilogy remake as well as this game. So we'll just have to wait and see there, but it does sound like Cory Barlog does have some creative input into this game. But the game takes place sort of concurrently with 2018 God of War game, and you're playing as Faye, who was Kratos' wife. You look to be in the sort of spirit realm. You've got a talking sword and a gelatinous cube. I'm in. I don't need to see much more. I don't know if this game is going to set things that far apart from a gameplay perspective when you compare to God of War Ragnarok and the 2018 God of War game. This looks to just be another one, slightly different gameplay style, slightly different characters, but probably going to follow a very similar sort of narrative path and sort of the plot points that you have seen in those 2 games. That is definitely not a negative, because both those 2 games are amazing. I just think that if this game is probably a couple of years off, they might have shown it a little early, because I think after we've seen this 20-minute look of this game, I think it's sort of like, cool, I'll see you on release date, and I don't really need to hear or see much more of it. So Those are my thoughts on the 5 games shown at the State of Play. There were others shown, but these were the ones that spoke to me the most. Let me know what you think in the comments below. My name is Dazza. Thank you very much for watching. Coming up soon, we're going to have my top 40 Switch 2 games that have come out. So look forward to that. I hope you have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you later.